Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. We're recording?
We are
Sweet.
hot.
Wow.
Hot Mike.
Welcome. Gosh,
Hi there.
wow. This has been a long time in kind of planning and
Yep. It's new.
well, and it's I was thinking about it just a few minutes ago that this really kind of was born out of what you were talking about earlier, conversations that we've had at this table
Yes.
or other tables,
Yes.
where we have just tailed off into the most random shit around. Conversations we've had, and it was William one day that was said, you guys should really record a radio show or something. And I was like, you know what? I've really gotten into podcasts.
Oh yeah.
And, I'd love to do that. And, that's when we kind of just started talking about what we would do. We had the original name, Please Hand Me That Piano.
Please hand me that piano.
Random shit you never hear.
George Carlin's bit.
And then Nerdery and Murdery kind of popped up one day as I was driving, thinking about that, I know you want to talk about pop culture or just
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, everything that people can nerd out about.
Yes, and it's an amazing how many things we think of nerdery as being Star Trek or Star Wars.
Yeah, I was going to say Star Wars is probably
yeah, but
what it should be.
fantasy football guys are nerds. All right.
I can attest to that. That has been an obsession of mine for a long time.
This is basically people who play D&D who don't want to admit they're playing D&D play fantasy football.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartily agree with that.
They go crazy over it.
They do. I mean, it's an obsession. I mean, fantasy football is that's a $1 billion business. And, I've been doing it for 20 years now, I guess. So, yeah, I definitely nerd out over that.
I think it may be a little longer.
Maybe. It's been since the early 90s for sure that I, nerded out over fantasy football. Back to the days before we had the internet where it would upload immediately. I mean, I used to sit there with a box score and a calculator.
From USA Today.
Yes. Every week. And that's when I sat and, would calculate up these scores, and I would email them out to people. And then, now we've got instantaneous stats. I can watch my stats on my phone. Don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, it's been a long time coming on that. And, I've been into true crime for so long. I love just the fascination behind it, all the true crime that's out there. Mm-hmm. And, my daughter is the one who got me into listening to podcasts. I started off listening to Parcast Cults and some other ones. And then I really got into, and This Is Why We Drink, which is a paranormal and true crime podcast. And they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. I'm very impressed with what they've done. They've been around just a few years. And so, it was a big thing to me. I really wanted to do this. I wanted to be able to cover stories and tell things that I'm learning and that I'm researching.
Things you're nerding out about.
Things I was nerding out about. I guess I was nerding out about murder.
Well, I kind of like this format because it reminds me of and another nerd point, like NPR shows where they talk about weird things. If you've ever seen the Saturday Night Live sketch Sweaty Balls,
yes,
that's what that's about.
Yes.
And these people will sit and talk about an obscure topic for an hour and a half, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And you and we've known each other for almost 30 years.
30 years. Yeah, coming up on 30 years.
We've had these kind of conversations where we're doing something, we're playing a game, and suddenly we tail off into something, and before we know it, 20 minutes, a half hour has gone by, and
easily.
We've completely gone away from what we were doing.
Whose turn is it again? Whose turn?
Have to get right back to it.
What do we...
Yeah. So, I mean, this was a long time coming, a long time planning. I'm super excited that we're starting this. We've already got some followers that are excited for us to release our first episode. We have some haters already, which is okay.
Haters! That means we're famous.
Yeah, I guess so. Or infamous, I think would probably be more like it.
Infamous.
So, I mean, whatever, they're going to do it. So, so, as we record each episode, I mean, that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the things that people can nerd out about, and we're going to talk about true crime, which is my focus, the murdery stuff of that. Yeah, that's my focus, and I've got and the dogs just went off.
Hello, dogs.
Have our pack of animals that just came by.
Yep. Here comes another dog.
More dogs.
More dogs. A lot of dogs.
Somebody once, we've got 2 standard poodles and the 3 chihuahuas. Somebody once said it must be like Pokemon that I'm trying to collect them all.
Yeah, trying to collect them all?
So that's really kind of how we're going to start this, and I hope that people love it. I really do. I mean, I'm very passionate about this. I love where we're taking this and what we're doing. So hopefully we can entertain. I'm pretty much afraid that for the most part, when Zig, when you're covering your stuff, that It's going to be pretty light and fun, and then we go the dark side with me.
You know what? I think that's the perfect combination. To be honest, we need a little dark side. We need a little light side. Yeah.
Well, you know what? And I just realized since I called you Zig, I didn't even introduce us ourselves,
Oh, yeah.
which is funny. I mean, I guess things that we're going to learn as we go along. I'm. Go ahead and introduce you first.
Hello, my name is Zig. I am a card-carrying nerd. I've got a card
That's
right here.
true. That's very true.
I actually have a card.
Yeah,
it's very nice.
True.
I have been into pop culture and nerdery my entire life. It started with
Both have.
Yeah. From a very young age, into love of science fiction and fantasy. And when I was a teen, I really was studying to be an actor, and I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And then I realized that I could just be a waiter.
we both had our bouts into being servers.
It was hard. I do miss it sometimes, but it was not so much the performing side. It was the study of why we do the things we do, why we like productions, and so that I'm going to be talking about that a little bit as time goes on, especially when we tail off into things like Southern Gothic literature plays. Particularly, I think they are probably the most American piece of literature out there, and maybe the best.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm Geoffrey, and true crime. Crime and true crime has been my obsession for a long time. I mean, I've always been into court dramas and police shows, and then, once the internet got big, we predated the internet mostly, kind of.
Yes.
That's when I learned to really research stuff, and I could go down so many rabbit holes. And that's what's happened as I've done the study for what I'm covering here. I've gone down so many rabbit holes, and I can only reach so much before I'm like, okay, I've read this now. I've got this. It's covered other ways. So like I said, we hope it's enjoyable to everybody. As we get more episodes in and they go live. We'd love for people to contact us. I'll give our contact info at the end, and let us know if there's things they're interested in us to cover. That
definitely
would be awesome.
Definitely.
So with that, I guess we ought to get into it. So
let's get into it.
You're up.
Well, awesome. Today, I really wanted to talk about a favorite band of mine.
I love how you're doing your notes on your phone. That's going to drive me crazy. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Really?
I'm sitting here with my setup. And
yes.
I love that you're doing it on your phone.
I've got just basically bullet points that I want to refer to because I want the conversation to occur a little more naturally. I want to talk about Let It Be and Tim by The Replacements, two specific albums. Now, The Replacements were an important indie band out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, back in the late 70s into the 80s. The indie scene back then was regional. If there were a band from an area, they had a certain sound.
There's a new movie that's coming out centered around exactly that, about the Smiths.
What?
Yeah. Oh gosh, you don't know about this?
What?
Yeah, I think it's been released. I'd have to look it up, but it's apparently it's based on the true story, I think, of a guy who takes a radio show hostage to play the Smiths
all day.
I think okay,
that's
what
this guy's one of my heroes.
The radio DJ is played by that guy from True Blood that played the werewolf.
Oh yeah,
the big werewolf.
Joe.
Yeah. Yes.
Joe Mantle.
Who's really a nerd himself. By
the way.
He
hosts the D&D game.
Yes, he has a celebrity D&D, which I think is the coolest thing. But yeah, no, you'll have to look up the trailer because I'm actually very interested in it.
Yeah, particularly about the Smiths. Also, another really important band from the 80s.
Well, you know what's funny? Because you and I have had this conversation before, too. You and I grew up, we're close to the same age.
Yeah, a couple of years apart, I think.
Yeah. We grew up in the same era, But I never knew about any of this subculture. I never heard it. I was pop music. I was listening to bubblegum pop and hair bands, and that's where I was listening to. And it wasn't until the early 90s that I started hearing New Order and Depeche Mode and The Cure and all kinds of, except for their stuff that went mainstream.
Yeah, everybody had a little bit of mainstream.
I just think it's so funny. I never heard any of that.
Well, you had to be an active listener back then. You had to go and look for it because indie music started with the corporatization of AOR radio, which is American album-oriented rock. So in the 70s, little bands such as like the Replacements and things like that would get like regional play, and eventually they would get moved out to these AOR stations. But the problem with that was the radio station started to get corporatized, so the AOR stations kind of went away. They stuck to certain bands. They wouldn't play other certain bands. So these indie bands, like we're talking about, like the Replacements, they had.
That was a dog burping, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Loud burper.
Did we get that? Yes. Our producer Will here is keeping track, keeping us gated, sort of in between the lines, as it were. So yeah,
you're an idiot.
So they didn't start playing these bands. So these local bands would have to play live, ostensibly, and then they wanted to record. And at that point, recording technology had gotten to where it was fairly cheap to do that yourself. So you would go down and you would pay the record pressing company to record it and press it, and it was kind of inexpensive. So basically, small record stores became record companies. They got their own labels.
Empire Records.
Yes, something like Empire Records. So this particular one that helped out the Replacements was called Or Folk Jokopus. Yes, this ridiculous name, and it was the hub of indie music in Minneapolis at the time. Also a popular record store for Prince, who was also in Minneapolis at the time and working with a lot of these guys. So some of the stuff did kind of get out there, but it was muted.
Loki's trying to get your attention.
Hi, Loki. So the
hey, baby.
So these bands would they would go into these record stores and they would present these demos that they recorded at home, and the little local record stores would make proper albums for them. That's what happened with the Replacements. They did 3 kind of punk sounding albums right off the bat. They did Sorry Mom, I Forgot to Take Out the Trash. Sorry Ma, I Forgot to Take Out the Trash. Stink. And so the name of the album was
Lovely.
The Replacements Stink, in other songs, and Hootenanny. So these 3 kind of punky albums. But by Hootenanny, they started to explore this sort of a country western kind of sound.
Preferable to punk for me. But,
okay.
Whatever.
So a lot of the alt country guys can trace their roots back to albums by the Replacements, particularly Don't Tell a Soul, which came later. Pleased to Meet Me, which also came later. But Let It Be and Tim are kind of the sweet spot for these guys. If you've never heard or seen Let It Be, I can say it is still a fairly punk record, but there are pieces of it that are transcendent.
So I can tell you that, because you told me you were going to cover this and these 2. I listened to both albums.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, Tim was a little more palatable to you than Let It Be?
So on Let It Be, I liked 4 songs.
Okay.
On Tim, 5.
Yeah.
On Let It Be, the songs that I didn't love any of it.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I didn't love any of it.
I get that.
I can definitely see where grunge could have come from
Yes.
this. I saw the basis of that. On Let It Be, the ones I liked the most were I Will Dare, Black Diamond, Senior
Which
Video.
is a Kiss cover, by the way.
Yes. Being a Kiss fan, I was hair-in, yes. Senior Video and 16 Blue. On Tim, the ones I really enjoyed were I'll Buy, Kiss Me on the Bus, Swingin' Party, Left of the Dial, and Little Mascara. So the rest of it, I was like, I'm not so big on it. But those I thought were good. And like I said, I definitely saw the grunge or how grunge was influenced by it. And grunge is another one that to me is odd because I was not into the grunge scene when it came out because, like I said, I was hairband. Motley Crue, which I'm seeing in August, yay.
Yuck.
I was Motley Crue and Kiss and Def Leppard, and grunge came along and destroyed hairband.
Oh yeah,
it was the end.
Most assuredly so.
That was the end of the 80s. And I wasn't a Nirvana fan. I wasn't a Pearl Jam fan. None of that.
You know what? To be honest, as a kind of a punk guy, I am not an incredible Nirvana fan either.
But I've grown to like them more.
Yes,
I'd say probably in about the last 5 years.
There's a couple of grunge bands that do not get their due, and I would say one of them is Green River, which half of Pearl Jam came out of. Another one is Mother Love Bone, which
I know Mother Love Bone. Yes,
that Pearl Jam also came out of. Malfunction.
Not familiar with them.
Okay, it was the singer from Mother Love Bone, and it was more of a funk-based band. They are... I don't even think I'm pronouncing the name right. They were heavily influential in that sound. And
I'm not going to say that either of us are grammartists, if that's even a word.
Grammartists?
So, if we mispronounce something,
sorry.
maybe as people listen to this could, can correct us and whatnot.
Yes.
I'm sure, but yeah, I don't know that either of us are the best ones to be quoted on our pronunciation of things.
Well, that's okay. It'll give somebody somebody to yell at.
Sure.
Particularly my friend Linda Rodriguez, which I have to give a shout out because she's the one that kind of turned me on to these two albums by the Replacements. I was more into because they did 3 pop records after these two. Don't Tell a Soul, which again is heavily influenced the country rock sound. There would be no old 97s without the Replacements album, Don't Tell a Soul.
Really?
Yes. It's you should give it a listen. Don't Tell a Soul, Pleased to Meet Me, and their final one, which was All Shook Down. Again, I was listening to this stuff. They actually had some hits on these albums. You've probably heard I'll Be You. Maybe.
I think so.
Maybe.
I might know the song and just not know the name.
Merry-Go-Round.
Merry-Go-Round, I know.
Yeah, Merry-Go-Round. And it was my friend Linda who's like, no. If you're going to listen to the Replacements, you need to listen to this. And I had actually owned a copy of Let It Be and hadn't given it a listen because I looked at the album cover and I thought it was beautiful and I needed to have it. I'd listened to it a couple of times through and it wasn't getting me.
That's one of the things I miss. So, I get all my music now through Spotify.
Yeah.
That's where all my music comes from. I've got lists that I build. And I love the fact that I can build my own albums, basically.
Of course.
Can categorize
mixtapes.
Yeah. But I do miss mixtapes. I also miss album covers.
Oh, yeah.
Because there were some really, really cool album covers. I used to take plastics in high school.
Yep.
And I would take the album covers off cassettes and make keychains from
Nice.
them because I just loved them.
That's awesome.
And there was some cool stuff. For a while there, I used to love a lot of the new age jazz, and I love the fact they all really had really cool,
Beautiful album
funky,
covers.
beautiful
Oh, yeah.
album covers. I miss those days
Yeah.
because you don't see that as much anymore. I mean, they're there. They're still producing this stuff, and they have covers,
Yeah.
artwork, but you just don't.
It's not like holding on to a record album.
Yeah, I miss going to the record store and thumbing through the albums and looking at the cassettes and just looking at some of the beautiful artwork. So I'm sorry, I just...
No. I get it, but I was going to tail off onto that to mention that. I'm glad you brought it up. Let It Be is probably one of the greatest album covers of the '80s. The Replacements, Let It Be, and they specifically
Yes, not the Beatles. I'm assuming
they specifically did that because their manager and the guy that owned the record company, Peter Jesperson, and the guy who ran Orpho Jokopus, was a Beatles fanatic. And they made the album cover "Let It Be."
Did they not get in trouble for having that name for an album?
No, they didn't. The Beatles didn't mind at all. The next album, Tim, they were thinking about naming it either "Let It Bleed" or "The Song Remains the Same." Yeah, or
I kind of have a feeling Led Zeppelin probably would have had a problem with that.
As a matter of fact, they did, as did the Who. So they decided to name it Tim, and I have some of the reasons why they named it Tim, or a couple of reasons, because the Replacements were funny about that. They would tell a story as to why they did something, and then a couple of years later they would tell another story, so no one's really sure what is true and what is not. And it's possible that all of those stories could have been true, because it was 4 different people. So yes, but Linda Rodriguez told me that I needed to listen to Let It Be and Tim. And I owned a copy of Let It Be because I thought it was a beautiful album cover. And I sat and listened to it. And then I went and bought Tim. Tim, effectively, is probably the worst album cover of the 1980s. It's terrible. It's awful. If you're listening, go look up a picture of the album Tim. It's a terrible album cover.
Yes, if you're listening and you haven't left us by now.
Yes,
which is entirely
if you're still
possible.
with us. Yeah. So yeah, you definitely want to check out Let It Be because, again, beautiful album cover. 4 people sitting on a roof in black and white. It's just brilliant. It says everything you need to know about that band. Tim, it's a picture of a hallway, and above it, it's a picture of their faces, but they're all obscured and they're drawn. Yeah.
All right.
Awful. Effectively, it is an awful album cover, but it's a beautiful album. And as you said, 5 of the songs on Tim really affected you. I'm surprised that it wasn't "Bastards of Young" because that is a song about us.
Yeah, but I remember that one. I didn't like it very much. So, okay, and you may be saying why. I may be jumping ahead, but when we had first talked about this, you had said it was important to listen to Let It Be first and then Tim.
Yes.
So why? I couldn't tell why I should listen to one before the other.
Because Let It Be effectively is their first grown-up album. It really is. I know it doesn't necessarily sound like that. You've got things like Gary's Got a Boner, things like that.
Right. Yeah. Another one I didn't really like.
Yeah, well, it's. But and then you go to Tim, where they actually they were trying. Let It Be is their last album with Twin Tone Records, which is out of the Orpho Jokopus. I hope I'm saying that right.
Whatever.
It's the last one.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to say sure.
It was the last one out of their Twin Tone record label, and Tim was the first major. That's a major label. That's not playing around. They were working with Seymour Stein by that point. There's a couple of funny stories as to how that kind of happened. But at the same time, Bob Stinson, the guitarist and essentially original leader of that band, was essentially fired.
Burping.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Thank you. Was essentially fired during that process, or quit. The story of the Replacements is kind of a sad story. So Bob Stinson was he was he had to go to a home basically while he was he had to go to reform school, something like that, and he was kind of in the system. And then his younger half brother Tommy was born, and he was afraid that the same thing that happened to him was going to happen to Tommy. And he was diagnosed with several mental issues, as it were, but they never did anything about them. So he was so worried about Tommy that he bought him a bass, and started playing music with him because he thought maybe that would be better than, going down the wrong path. And it wasn't so much the wrong path of drinking and recreational drugs. He didn't see those as necessarily being a problem, but abuse, things of that nature, crime, because that's what Bob Stinson was kind of getting into. That was the path he was going down. And then he went into the foster care system, and he learned to play guitar, and he learned about music. And Bob Stinson was not a punk fan, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. No, his favorite band was Yes.
Yes was outstanding.
Steve Howe, was his favorite guitarist.
Loved Yes.
But he also didn't want to do overproduced music either. He saw the value of what they were doing, but he also thought that they were overblown, as it were. So he's got his 11-year-old half brother. They start playing together in 1979. They meet up with a drummer, Chris Mars, who was a friend of a friend, great drummer. Chris Mars now is a fine artist. He's well known around the world. His paintings hang in galleries and museums. He thinks of the Replacements as his paper route.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is kind of crazy.
Sorry, the joys of being live and having some
technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties, as well as having to go take care of personal issues.
Yes. Had to drain the main vein, as it were.
Oh my God. Oh my dear Lord. Oh, please edit that out. Please edit that out.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Go on.
So this high school dropout, who was an A honor roll student, Paul Westerberg, he decided that he wanted to pursue a career in music. So he got a job as a janitor for Representative David Durenberg, which is a weird kind of side. He's walking home every day and he hears this band playing. So he basically becomes their first fan. They get this singer, he's singing, he's okay. Paul Westerberg convinces the singer that the rest of the band doesn't like him and he should quit. So Paul Westerberg becomes the singer of the band Dog Breath. That's right. The first name of the band was Dog Breath.
Nice. They
changed the name to The Impediments, and they go and have a show at an AA meeting, basically, and they all show up drunk. They get banned. They do one set. They get banned. Their whole career's like this. They get banned, and so they change their name to the Replacements as under Replacements. And they use a bunch of different other names too when they're playing. There's sometimes they'll refer to themselves as the Mats when they want to do a little quiet show, but people in Minneapolis know who they are. Anyway, so they get going and they've got a great sound. It's original, and they start hearing punk music basically for the first time. And they decide that that's what they want to do because
that's the most awful music in the world.
It is not the most awful music in the world. It's raw.
I'll agree with you there. It's raw. I will never forget. I'll never forget the time you made me go into a punk bar in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas, baby.
I mean, number one, that was a hard weekend as it was because we had been moving our friend Keith that weekend, and we were in the same clothes because we didn't plan on staying.
We smelled bad.
Oh, God, it was terrible.
It was about 100 degrees out, too.
It was awful. And that place was awful. Oh, it was somewhere off 6th Street.
Yes, it was I think it was called the Brew House.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't
because they brewed their own beer.
I just remember hated being there.
I don't think 2 chairs in the entire place matched.
No, that's for...
Well,
it was mostly standing room only.
Yeah. I know there was a point. I wanted to go and dance, but I was so tired from moving.
Oh, gosh.
That I sat on a bicycle seat. The chair I was sitting on was a bicycle seat.
I remember
with
that.
With pedals.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun bus ride home. Back when we had to take a bus.
Yeah, we had to take a bus
to come back.
We had to take the bus.
Oh, that was awful. That bar and that bus ride home was just terrible.
The bar was beautiful.
Terrible.
Beautiful. So yes. I'm sorry.
You got lost there.
I was thinking about that beautiful bar in Austin.
You were nodding at me like I was going to say something. And I'm like, what the fuck is he nodding for?
Sometimes we go off on tangents.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, they start doing the punk music. They pick up a following in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. Edina was a big town back then. They start playing this place called the Longhorn Bar, which was really important to indie music back then. But something interesting happened in Minneapolis. It was actually happening in other parts of the country. Is that punk music? They got tired of playing the same thing all the time, so all of that music started to evolve, and that's what happened to them. Which is why, again, Let It Be and Tim are so important, because they're at that point of the evolution of how hardcore punk bands like Black Flag end up becoming bands like The Replacements or the Pixies, or into a smaller extent, even the Smiths, because Morrissey's first band was a punk band with the guitar player from The Cult. They were in a band called the Nosebleeds. And they went nowhere.
And then, of course, the Smiths.
Yes. Well, he ended up becoming a writer for a few years before the Smiths. But yeah, it's that evolution from hardcore punk, which I still like, but I can't listen to that all day. You know, I don't know anyone who can.
Oh, not me.
Yeah. I mean,
sure.
there are, 17, 18-year-old kids who can't do that anymore.
Right.
But yeah, so that's why this is important. Kind of because it tracks that evolution. And so we get into the recording of Let It Be, which, keep in mind, okay, so as I was saying, Tommy Stinson, when they started, was 11 years old.
Right.
When Tommy Stinson recorded his first album, he was 13. By the time Tommy Stinson is recording Let It Be and Tim, he is between, because it's about a 2 to 3 year period, he is between 16 years old and 18 years old. Can you imagine recording an album at 16 years old?
Steve Winwood, same
thing.
He was like 12 or 13 when he first started recording.
Yeah, the Jefferson Davis Group.
Phil Collins was young.
Yes.
When he was the drummer for Genesis. So yeah, there's I can't imagine it. No,
he's been the touring bassist, or he was the touring bassist with Guns N' Roses for like 15 years. Nobody knows that. And he was also touring with one of their contemporaries, Soul Asylum. Soul Asylum is actually, there's a recording of The Replacements where the band in Soul Asylum is screaming "fuck you" to the police on a Replacements album. Everybody's convinced that's Dave Pirner. Dave Pirner remembers saying it and remembers being at the live show in an apartment that they call the cops on.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, again, the whole band's like that. Their entire career is like that. They ended up imploding a few years later. That was the other thing. The Peter Buck from REM also plays on an album or one of the tracks on Let It Be. He was originally going to produce the album and didn't. Yep. So yeah, can you imagine being 16, 17, 18 years old and making two what are considered seminal albums?
Right.
In the indie rock They're their version of Let It Be by the Beatles.
Right.
There you go. It's in some circles, they are considered some of the greatest albums of the 80s. And again, it's not just because they're punk. It's because they're not. They're becoming something else.
Right. Yeah, and I wasn't hearing a lot of the punk on those albums.
Yes.
Specifically. Like I said, I could see where grunge was influenced. I didn't see punk in that at all. So that's interesting.
Yeah, a couple of the people who were influenced. Uncle Tupelo. Mm-hmm. Uncle Tupelo becomes very important later on because they become Wilco.
Right.
Drive-By Truckers, the Goo Goo Dolls, who I loved.
I love the Goo Goo Dolls.
They said they ripped them off for years. If you ever get a chance to listen to some of the Goo Goo Dolls earlier stuff, it's a little less poppy, but it's just as good. Jed is good, but the one after Jed, oh my God, I can't remember what it is. I can't remember the name of the Goo Goo Dolls album after Jed. Oh no, and I was just listening to this last week. So yeah, look that up. The Goo Goo Dolls album after Jed. I can't even. It's got a bunch of colored dots on the album cover. It's outstanding and exceptional. I think you would really, really dig it. A lot of the stuff they play live now comes from that album. Hold Me Up. Even though it's not a song on the album, it's a refrain in one of the songs.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, Hold Me Up. I think you would really, really dig it. But it was directly responsible. And the one they did after that, Superstar Car Wash, was actually produced by Paul Westerberg. And he wrote one of the songs, We Are the Normal. Again, an ode to being not normal.
Right.
Yeah, which is what a lot of their stuff did. So yeah, I guess in wrapping up to talk about the albums more specifically, on Tim, Alex Chilton was supposed to produce, but they couldn't quite get that off. He did play guitar on one or two of the songs, but the album was actually produced by Tommy Erdelay, also known as Tommy Ramone.
Oh,
yes, yeah. So Tommy was the drummer for the Ramones for their first 3-4 albums, and he was kind of taking the seat as the producer because they couldn't afford to hire a producer. And eventually he just became the record producer for the Ramones, and they got another drummer.
Fascinating.
CJ, who is the only living member. Tommy, unfortunately, has passed away in the last few years. But yes, he did produce Tim and played a little guitar on it too, because Bob Stinson was having some trouble with some of his demons, and they kind of lost him toward the end of the recording of the album, which is sad because Bob Stinson had kind of kept the Ramones as being, or rather, sorry, the Replacements as being sort of wild and crazy. But they were able to do some more poppy stuff after that, which is every bit as good, but not as soul kicking, I guess, because Androgynous will kick you in the soul. Bastard of the Young will kick you in the soul. Little Mascara, Hold My Life, Left of the Dial. Interesting thing about Left of the Dial. You know why it's called Left of the Dial? Well, I said earlier the AOR stations, right? They started to fade away because they were more corporatized and they became essentially classic rock stations. So you would have these local stations, these college radio stations or local independent stations.
Like KTCU.
Like KTCU, yes. They were low powered, so they didn't give them prime location on the bandwidth. Prime location on the bandwidth, for those of you who remember, who have a dial on your radio, everything in the middle is where the radio station wants to be, right? So everything to the right or to the left is slated for lower power systems.
Yeah, I remember KTCU was 88.1.
88.7. It's still around. It is still around.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, well, the college is still there. But yeah, all your big hitters were the Zoo, which was 94.5.
97.9 or 98. 98 KZEW. It was
Yeah.
97.9.
Yeah, and then the Eagle 97.1. We had Q102.
Yep, all in the middle of the city. Yeah, but the album or the indie bands played on these little lo-fi stations, and they were all left of the dial.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that.
Yes,
I never thought about that.
That's why it was called. And that's a song about another musician that he was kind of having an on-again, off-again relationship with because they were both touring. I heard about your band. It was something to see. I could only hear your voice left of the dial, which is why that song is so beautiful.
That's cool. I like Left of the Dial was good. I liked that one. That was one I really liked.
And I still think it's anthemic of that particular genre of music.
Yeah.
So that's it, essentially.
Well, no,
yes,
that was good. I learned a lot on that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know how much I would really learn on that. I mean, I've teased you for years about how much I hate punk, which I do. But the Pixies, I don't mind the Pixies as much as I say. You're right that song you mentioned.
Where's My Mind?
Where's My Mind? That's a great song.
Yeah, it's
I really enjoy
classic.
that one.
Yeah.
Of course, it was in Fight Club, and so love that. So.
Yeah, well, and you will hear the replacements in a lot of movies too, because a lot of directors and writers are like me, a little nerdery about this stuff.
Awesome, that's great. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure, anytime. I can talk about the replacements anytime.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. All right. So, you want to hear a story about murder?
Murdery.
Had to take a quick pause, get some drink refills. Had to put William, who's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, in my Cowboys cup, which is awesome. Love it. So, hope you enjoy.
Is that the football?
Of course, it's the football.
That's the football?
Of course, it's the football.
So, you guys score the home runs? Is that?
Yes, we score the home runs. Absolutely.
All right. Excellent.
I hate you so much.
Go sports. Yay,
so
team. Do the thing.
So, all right. So, you ready for some murder?
Murder.
So this is a, and I say this is a favorite of mine. And it's kind of a funny one for murder.
Funny murder.
Yeah, I had heard this a few places. One of my inspirations was the podcast, and This Is Why We Drink. I absolutely love them, and they had covered this. But I also got this information from the Journal, and they called this Greed, Murder, and Whiskey: How an Indestructible Irishman Finally Fell Afoul of New York City in the 1930s.
Love New York City in the 1930s.
Yes. I also took stuff from Smithsonian Magazine, the Irish Post, and then there was a documentary in 2015 called, and I'm going to murder this, I know, Dioch and Dorius. I don't know. I probably should look that up.
Sounds like a fine Irish name there.
Well, this is
a fine Irish name.
It's a Scottish and Irish variant of Doch and Doris, or A Parting Drink. Which I watched on YouTube. So this is the story of Iron Mike Malloy, who is also known as Rasputin of the Bronx or Mike the Durable.
Wow. Sounds like a dwarf.
Yeah, a little bit on that. Mike Malloy, he was a homeless man from County Donegal, Ireland. I had to look that up several times because
Donegal?
County Donegal? That's how they call it. But County Donegal, Ireland. He came to America in about 1970, lived on the streets of New York City during the 20s and 30s. Jobs had dried up. It's the Great Depression. He was apparently a fireman once. I think I saw that, he was a former firefighter. While others, he was a stationary engineer working on industrial machines in New York. I don't understand that either. But as many Irish immigrants were during this time, Mike was quite fond of the bottle.
Oh, well.
Yes. He was known to frequent speakeasies, drinking, making friends. He hit the bottle hard and became a slave to it, or as they called it, the speakeasy derelict.
Ooh, speakeasy derelict.
Yes.
I like that.
Speakeasies fascinate me. I've always wanted to go to a speakeasy. I know they've been popping up and, they're supposed to be hard to find and everything. But yeah, speakeasy derelict.
Well, I know there are a few bars in Fort Worth that were ex-speakeasies.
Yes.
There was a teen club on Camp Bowie that actually was once a speakeasy right over by the Tuesday Morning.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Yes. The Camp Bowie Cruising Club was a bar before that, and way back in the day was a speakeasy.
Interesting.
Or so the local lore goes.
Interesting. Well, so in December of 1932, 5 men were talking about money and how to make more of it. One of them thought up the idea of a life insurance scam, and they decided to take advantage of our poor protagonist here, Iron Mike. In 1932, it was the last year of the Prohibition laws. Mm-hmm. These 5 men who come into play quite a bit throughout here were, you'll love these names, Tony Marino, he was the speakeasy owner.
Hey, Tony!
Joseph Red, quote-unquote, Murphy, he was the barman.
Wow.
Francis Pasqua, the undertaker. Hershey Green, the cabbie. And Daniel Kreisberg, the fruit seller.
Wow.
They would later be known as the Murder Trust.
Nice.
Yes. They all saw how Mike would go to the same bars every night, drink half his weight in liquor.
Nice.
And then pass out.
All right.
This was Mike's thing. And so what the Murder Trust decided to do is they were going to take out life insurance policies on Mike and get him to drink himself to death.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So,
that's festive.
Yeah. And this wasn't the first time they'd pulled this similar scam. They actually, Marino took out a policy on a homeless woman. Her name was Maybelle Betty Carlson, and made himself the beneficiary. Mm-hmm. He then force-fed her alcohol, stripped her naked, then doused her mattress in icy water and left it below an open window. And she froze to death.
Wow.
Yeah, she was found the next day.
What a pillar of the community, that guy.
Right. And it's so funny. So many of these murderers are pillars of the community. And that happens so often. But yeah, the coroner deemed the death to be from bronchial pneumonia.
Okay.
And Marino picked up $2,000, which today is about $26,000.
I'd say that's quite a bit of money. 32.
Yep. That's what he picked up from the policy. No one questioned it.
No.
So
probably thought of as a smart move.
Yeah. Right. Well, so the 5 guys, they decided to make friends with Mike. They cozened him up at the bar and they started buying him free drinks. Then they handed him a petition telling him they were trying to get Marino into public office. So they said, Mike, hey, you're a good buddy. You're our friend. Let's help, Tony Marino get into public office. So sign these petitions. Uh-huh. But what he was signing instead were 3 insurance policies under the name Nicholas Malloy, worth about $3,500 or $60,000 today.
Nice.
Red, the barman, he posed as Nicholas's brother Joseph Malloy and signed it as the beneficiary. So this is where they had it. The three insurance policies they're going to get on him. Tony Marino, again being the bar owner, he told Mike he could drink all he wanted for free. Huh. The 5 guys really thought Mike was so out of shape that this really wouldn't take long at all for him to drink himself to death.
Couple of weeks. They
would be very, very wrong. As you're going to find out. Oh, you'll find out.
Okay.
Iron Mike ended up being just the man who wouldn't die. Mike, he would drink all day, every day. And without fail, he'd show up at the front door the next morning as happy as ever. According to the New Yorker, his thirst was immense, but his buying ability limited. He would pause drinking only long enough to eat the complimentary sardine sandwiches they were providing. That's gross.
So he drank all day and ate sardine sandwiches.
Yes.
Probably out of a can, I'm assuming.
Yes. So
salt and liquor.
Yes.
All day.
Yes. Those sardine sandwiches will come into play later too.
Okay.
So,
God, his breath must have been awful.
Oh, it gets worse. It gets so much worse. When he just kept showing up, they would bring him in and they would start giving him shots, and then they started replacing it with antifreeze.
What?
Yeah, they would give him shots of antifreeze, and Mike would just keep drinking, and the next day he'd return again smiling, ready for another drink. He even said he preferred this new drink to the whiskey they had been previously serving him.
Oh, dear Lord. It kind of reminds me of a story I heard about Bela Lugosi. Toward the end, his drinking got really bad, and liquor wasn't doing it for him anymore, so he started drinking formaldehyde.
Yeah. Well, in the YouTube video I watched, the one that I'm not going to try to pronounce again, they actually had a pathologist, Marcella the Chief Fiora. Mm-hmm. They interviewed her, and she said that they were giving him that they were giving him regular alcohol first, mm-hmm. which was pre-treating his liver for the antifreeze. Right. She said the alcohol was taking up all the room for the liver, so all he had to do was piss out the antifreeze.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how they were going.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then.
Right. So this wasn't
his liver
working.
Was massive.
Oh, I know. Right. So next, when this wasn't working, they replaced the antifreeze with turpentine and rat poison.
Jesus.
This still had no effect.
Wait. Turpentine and rat poison?
Yes.
And it still didn't kill him?
No.
I mean, okay, not just didn't kill him once, but didn't kill him for weeks on end.
Well, he'd drink until he passed out, and they'd throw him into the street, and every morning, here's Mike waiting for the bar to open so he could start drinking again. Every day.
Wow.
So now they've gone to something else. They've started serving him shots tainted with wood alcohol, methanol.
Which will make you go blind.
Yes. And then they moved to straight wood alcohol. I'm not sure the difference between wood alcohol, methanol, and straight wood alcohol, but Red, the bartender, they said that he would purchase 10-cent cans of wood alcohol at a nearby paint shop and then bring them into the bar in a paper bag. Yeah,
it's paint thinner. The moonshiners used to brew up a batch of wood alcohol and run their cars on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's essentially what Formula One cars run on now.
Right. Well,
every day.
Mike came back for more.
Jesus.
At this point, the cost of all the free alcohol, the wood alcohol, and the insurance premiums they were still having to pay. Marino was afraid that he was going to go bankrupt. So,
this guy was drinking so much, he was drinking him into bankruptcy.
Right. And remember that this was only to split $3,500, which I think it was $60,000 today between 5 guys.
Yeah.
So now they had to get creative. So you remember the food?
Yeah, the sardine sandwiches.
So at one point, Pasqua, he the Undertaker. Mm-hmm. He once saw a man die after eating raw oysters soaked in whiskey.
Okay.
So they took raw oysters and soaked them in whiskey, although the video said formaldehyde, and fed them to Mike. Did nothing. So now we come back to the sardine sandwiches.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Okay, I can remember in the 90s you and I would take shots of raw oysters with cocktail sauce and vodka and shoot those, and that was delicious. So I'm thinking, hey, at least it was good.
Maybe.
But okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No,
ahead,
that's
please.
great.
So raw oysters, formaldehyde. I got that in my head.
Didn't work. So now we've gone back to the sardine sandwiches.
Now I want this guy to die.
Just wait. There's more. So now they start...
They sliced him in two and he still showed up at the bar.
Oh, gosh, you're going to come close with that one.
What?
Oh, I'll get there. So now they started making him sandwiches made of spoiled sardines.
Oh.
Wait for it. Broken glass, carpet tacks, and they even took the tin for the can itself of sardines and chopped it up and finally and ground it finely into the sandwich. Not only did that fail, but he asked for another sandwich. You're speechless. I know.
Was he Superman?
You know what? We don't know. And the sad thing was, so at this point in the video, they were talking to the pathologist again, and the sound cut out for the entire segment of this portion. I kept trying to find another copy of it, but all the same, the sound cut out right
She
there.
was speechless, Geoffrey. She was speechless. That's what it was.
I don't know if she said anything helpful to why he could survive
or
this.
It was a string of profanities.
Maybe. Oh, it was so terrible, so bad.
God, the 30s sucked.
I know. So one night, Mike crumpled on the floor, and the truss just sat there staring at him. His breath was slow and labored, so they waited, and then Mike began to snore. So he just fell asleep. He passed out and fell asleep. He woke up hours later, rubbed his eyes, and said, "Give me some of the old regular, me lad." So
What's some of the old regular?
More.
The rare old Mountain Dew, as it were.
Oh, God. Well, now the murder trust, they felt that his stomach was indestructible and nothing they gave him to eat or drink would kill him. So they decided to go back to an old tactic that worked before. Remember Ma Bell, Betty?
Spraying down the mattress with the water.
Yep.
In New York.
So a little different on this. So on a freezing night in January, keep in mind, at this point, all of this has happened in 1 month.
What?
1 month.
Okay. And it's January.
It's now January.
1932,
in New York City.
January, New York City.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kill you weather.
Well, the temperature had reached 26 below.
26 below.
26 below.
Yeah. That's deadly.
Yeah. And they waited for Mike to pass out. Once he did, they stripped him naked. They dumped him in the snow. And for good measure, they poured 5 gallons of water on his chest and face and left him to die.
Okay.
Once again, Mike showed up the very next morning.
With no clothes?
Looking for a drink and saying he woke up with a wee chill. I know.
I think Mike's a triplet. I think 2 of them have already died, and if not, they need to.
Well,
Yeah.
So now they were growing even more desperate, and they waited for the next night of heavy drinking, and they took him staggering outside to where a taxi was waiting. It said that the 5 men, they tried paying off 2 other men to do this, but they refused. So they got their friend Hershey Green, the cabbie.
Okay.
And who took it upon himself to do it. And in his taxi, he ran Mike down going 45 miles an hour.
He ran over the dude.
Ran him over and then backed over him to be sure.
So he hit him with his car twice.
Not before Mike leapt out of the way of the cab twice.
Oh, he got out of the way.
Twice before they hit him.
Oh,
They hit him. They eventually hit him. And there's Loki. Again.
No. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So let me get him real quick. No bark. So yeah, they.
The dog is now looking at us like, but I want to bark.
Yeah. So they hit him twice, and then they drove away. So now they thought they won.
Okay.
Mike did not show up the next day.
Okay.
They called around to mortuaries because they needed to confirm his death, so they collect the money, but there was no record of Mike anywhere. 3 weeks later, Mike showed up for a drink.
Okay. At this point, he had seen them try to kill him, right?
Yeah, but he was drunk. He was drunk. I mean, blackout drunk. What had happened is Mike had been found on the side of the road and taken to the hospital. He suffered a broken shoulder, a concussion, and possible fractured skull. He also had no memory of the night in question.
Wow.
All he knew is he was thirsty and ready for another drink. Yeah. According to the newspaper that covered the story, Mike was in the hospital after a few days. He got up from his cot, walked to Marino's bar, and said, I'm not dying for a drink. Let's have some more of that good liquor.
Wow.
Yeah. At this point, they didn't know if they could murder him. They thought they just couldn't murder him.
He can't be murdered.
No, they actually tried hitting another man with the cab to pass as Nicholas Malloy, but that one too lived. I mean, these guys are terrible.
Oh my God. They're such rotten murderers. Which I guess is a good thing for society, you know, if they're not good at their jobs.
Well, they came up with one final plan. They waited for Mike to pass out. Mm-hmm. They carried him up to Marino's bedroom, which some reports I saw was above the bar. Others I saw was down the street. I got
close to the bar.
Stuff on there.
Yeah, close to the bar.
And they stuck an open gas pipe down his throat.
Down his throat?
Down his throat.
Wow.
Mike was now dead an hour later, and his death was attributed to a case of pneumonia.
Okay.
The Irish Post did say that they believed that they had bribed a doctor. There was another site that Dr. Frank Manzella signed the death certificate and was bribed $100 or almost $1,200 today for this. Mike was buried quickly, and the murder trust collected their money. Mm-hmm. One insurance company paid out their policy of $800. The second did not, as they thought everything suspicious.
Well, you know.
Pasqua, the undertaker, he had Mike buried in a $10 coffin and a $12 grave. Well, at this point, after Mike died, word spread about Mike the Durable, as you would expect they might. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy, and this is where they messed up, is they apparently dying by asphyxiation makes the body a very telltale cherry red.
Okay.
So the medical examiner immediately knew it was asphyxiation by carbon monoxide. Mm-hmm. Nice factoid here, though. Had Pasqua, the undertaker, had he embalmed the body, all traces of the gas would have been removed.
Huh.
So he messed up.
And you would think him being an undertaker, he would know that, but apparently he wasn't good at being an undertaker either.
Right. Yeah, I wonder what these guys were good at.
Well, it's certainly not killing Iron Mike.
No. Well, they did. They finally did.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
The murder trust was arguing at this point. They couldn't decide how to fairly split the money. There had been some open fighting about it. People were talking, and this caused the attention of the police.
Hello.
Yes, they investigated, and all five were put on trial and convicted for murder. Dr. Manzella was arrested and charged with being accessory after the fact.
Nice.
The two men who refused to run Mike down, they were taken in as material witnesses.
Nice.
Green, the cabbie, he was sent to prison for life, while the other four were sentenced to death and executed at Sing Sing prison.
Sing Sing.
In Sing Sing, yeah.
Gas chamber or electric chair?
It was the electric chair.
Oh.
All told, there were over 20 attempts made on Mike's life over the period of 4 months.
Wow. And that's probably not even counting just trying to get him to drink himself to death.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought this was really funny. On the Smithsonian website, the article I read, they had a quote that said, "The charter members of the murder trust were sent to the electric chair at Sing Sing, which killed them all on the very first try."
On the very first try. See, this is how you do it, folks. Click.
And that is the story of Iron Mike Malloy, Durable Mike, and the Rasputin of the Bronx.
Wow. Well, salute to Iron Mike.
Yes.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
I mean, that's why that story just fascinated me so much. I absolutely knew that was going to be the first one I wanted to cover because it's just so out of control.
It's a little funny.
A little funny for a murder.
Yes, for a murder. Yeah, it's
so
for a murder, it's downright hysterical.
Yeah. So that's that. I mean, that's the end of our first podcast.
What? No.
Yeah.
This isn't this isn't work. This is fun.
No, it was good.
Enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, that was thoroughly enjoyable. I hope we gave some entertainment out there as well,
And some information.
and some information.
Yes.
I got some information for sure, for sure.
Yes, a punk band that doesn't like to listen to punk music.
Right.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to find us, we have our Facebook page.
Yes.
Nerd and Murd.
Nerd and Murd.
The Nerdery and Murdery, the podcast. We also have nerderyandmurdery.com,
Yes.
which is our official website. Where we'll have episodes posted, pictures. We do have a blog there.
Small bits of information, maybe.
Yes.
And we need to put up some links so people can go and check out.
Yeah, we'll put that as well. So we've got our emails, which you can reach me direct at Geoffrey at nerderyandmurdery.com. You can find Zig at nerderyandmurdery.com.
Yes.
If you want to email William and find out how he can stand either of us, you can find him at will at nerderyandmurdery.com.
You can't hear he's been giggling this whole time.
Yeah, he has. So, Will, thanks for being our producer, man. This has been really, really cool.
Shout out to William.
Absolutely. Yay. Shout out to William.
out to
Great
Will.
job. Great job. Yay. We'll have Instagram and Twitter soon. We'll have those kind of things up, and you have something else.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out. Anybody who's interested in The Replacements, there is a documentary. It is on Amazon. It's only a couple of bucks. It's called Color Me Obsessed. It's the fans and their contemporary speaking, including Peter Jesperson, who we mentioned. It's a couple of hours. It's great for a longtime fan, but if nothing else, give the first hour a listen so you can hear the story, because the story about these guys is fascinating. Also, there's a book called Trouble Boys. If you get a chance to check that one out, it's actually from the point of view of Paul Westerberg and Tommy Stinson, the boy who became a man in this band. Really, really great stuff. I would recommend it. And of course, you should give the albums a listen. Awesome.
We'll put the links on our website as well. With that, this has been
Nerdery
and Murdery, the podcast. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Cue the music.